Welcome to the Painting Lines Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things tennis. Join Erik and Aidan in their discussion for updates on news and pop culture, and from hot takes to betting, they've got you covered.
Ready? Play.
Welcome back to Painting Lines. Last week, we gave our recap of the U.S. Open this year, and this week, the big event that's going on is the Davis Cup. So we just wanted to focus on that. To be completely honest, I haven't ever really followed the Davis Cup super closely. Have you, Erik?
No, not historically, but I would say right now I'm somewhat following it just because I have that post US Open tennis itch where, you go 2 straight weeks of watching great matches every single day to pretty much no tennis. So I've been kind of following it. It's not really, my top source of entertainment just because the lack of pull from there's not the best players, but I think it is kind of interesting to see, up and coming players who you might not see in a slam actually play. And as you'll see, there has been some pretty crazy upsets. So not really following closely, but definitely keeping an eye on it.
Yeah, I think the thing about it is that you find guys that care about their nation winning. Whereas I think some countries like the US, I don't think they really have that much of a patriotism that pushes them to that next level, if you know what I mean.
I know exactly what you mean. I feel like, especially in the US, it's known for being an individualistic society. So people tend to kind of do things more for themselves than for their country. And yeah, if you're a smaller player from a smaller country, you're probably, the man there and bringing it home to the home country. I feel like that's like a big part of, or at least it was a big part of this tournament in the past.
Yeah. Do you have any matches you've seen so far that have stood out?
Yeah, I mean, I really liked the Wawrinka Nori match that I'll get into a little later, but I was a little bummed. We could have potentially seen a Djokovic Alcaraz match because Serbia did play Spain, but Djokovic ended up playing Davidovich Fokina because Alcaraz isn't playing.
Yeah, that is a bummer because I feel like Spain could be a really good team if they had healthy players.
That's what I was thinking too. I was assumed, I mean, obviously not Nadal now, but imagine if you had Nadal, Alcaraz, and I think Davidovich Fokina is probably the third best Spaniard now.
Bautista Agut is also very good. He's not playing recently.
Yeah, he kind of flies under the radar.
100%.
He is good. I just haven't heard too much about him recently. And then there's another one too. Oh, Carreno Busta. See what I mean? Spain has good players, but they're probably getting eclipsed by Carlos.
Yeah, they do have a lot of good guys that kind of fly under the radar like that. You're right. But until this year, I didn't really think about why I didn't follow the Davis Cup super closely. And it's kind of just because I don't think of tennis as a team sport. Like, obviously, team tennis is a thing. It's how it's formatted in high school, college, and in the professionals, they have the Laver Cup and the Davis Cup, like we're talking about right now. But it's just kind of a weird aspect because you're an individual when you're on the court, but you're contributing to an overall team.
No, I agree. I mean, tennis is just naturally not a team sport. You have football, basketball, baseball, where all these sports have different positions where people add different values and different things to the table to come together as a cohesive unit. That's how you get your result. But tennis, since it's not a team sport, but they're trying to make it one, this is the best that they could do.
Yeah, to me, it's kind of like you're winning the battles, but there's an overall war. The whole match between the two teams is the war, and then each individual match is a battle. You can win three of the battles, but still lose the war because you lost overall.
Yeah. So my sister, she does track and field at Wake Forest. So me watching a going to a track meet, it's kind of similar thing. It's all individualistic components. And then at the end of the track meet, they just add everyone's points together. And also track it, even kind of some of the events, like she's a thrower, you're essentially competing. I don't want to say against yourself, but you could also be competing against other people at your school, right? If you have three throwers in the same event, it's kind of a weird dynamic where you guys are on the same team, but you're also trying to do the best for yourself.
The weird thing that's different about track and field is that you don't just get points for winning. You get points for first, second, third, down to sometimes even like 10th at a big meet.
Kind of just going back to the whole team aspect in tennis, do you think you can explain that dynamic?
Well, so in high school, the way it works is for me, it was 6 singles players and 3 doubles teams. So essentially, you have 12 people playing, there's 9 matches overall, and it's just best out of that 9. So if you have 5 out of your 6 singles players win, doesn't even matter how the doubles go.
Is the high school and college tennis season, you play one school 12 on 12?
It's like it's a single college football game, except
Mhm.
it's made up of 9 individual matches.
Then I really like your analogy about the war, winning individual battles, but not winning the war.
Yeah, no, because you can be ranked individually pretty highly, even
Mhm.
if your team wasn't very good.
Yeah, and I think that kind of goes into the psychology part of it too. Like if you are doing well, you're winning all your matches, but your team is not like winning, I guess, the whole thing. I mean, you're not that pressed, you won. Who cares about if what your team did?
Yeah, that is a weird aspect too, though, because it is kind of like track and field too. Like you could be the best 100-meter runner in the country. It doesn't really matter how your team does overall.
Yeah.
Overall, I think the reason I haven't been that much of a fan of it is just because one of my favorite things about tennis as a sport is just that it's just you and you're the only one out there, especially in singles. I mean, in doubles, you have a partner, but even then, it's just you two. And so you have a little bit of a support system, but that's what makes it great to me is that you have to make the adjustments. You have to understand what the other people are doing. You have to stay mentally strong. And when there's a team aspect, it makes me feel like, okay, yeah, I can lose because I trust that my teammate's going to win his match, especially in the Davis Cup where it doesn't affect your ATP ranking.
Right. I mean, do you think it's also you just probably came out of the US Open, everything was super intense. You've been laser focused, dialed in, and then to just go to this Davis Cup where, yeah, like you said, it doesn't really affect your ranking. It's not as big of a deal anymore. Do you think players are just playing super carefree and not really having that competitive edge, that fire under them to go out and win?
I think to an extent, I think, especially with like America, there just isn't that patriotism, that feeling like I'm representing my country. And it's actually more important that I win now. And I think in other places, they feel that bigger purpose almost.
Yeah, I get that. Kind of like what you said earlier, how tennis is, so individual. It's kind of compared to boxing a lot too, where you're going out there, you're battling someone, you're taking a break in between, figuring out, okay, what I was doing is not working, or let me try to adjust. And at least in boxing, they say it's not as lonely because you have your team in your corner. Every time you break in between rounds, you have your coach who's with you telling you what to do. You have people stitching you up, wiping your face off. Like you have a whole unit that's dedicated to you. But in tennis, man, in between games on the changeover, you're sitting there by yourself. And all you have is yourself to just sit and marinate, try to make those adjustments yourself. And it's a weird thing to try to make as a team, especially with other players.
I think especially, yeah, just how the tennis world is now. Like all these guys have been the man of their area their entire life, pretty much. In tennis now, you have to be so specialized in it from such a young age that if you're one of these top guys, you were the best player in your area for your entire life.
Mhm.
And it brings even more of that individualness to your personality. And so trying to compete as a team, it just isn't in your tennis nature.
I agree. It's kind of like Alabama college football. You have all these kids who were the best at their high school, all of them going to one university. There's only one starting position each. So, it kind of gets to be honestly a confidence detractor too. Like you come in and you're thinking that you are the shit and then you get humbled real quick. So, same kind of thing happens here, not necessarily with the team tennis, but just tennis in general. Like you said, if you have someone who comes from, I don't know, like a smaller town, they're the best, they work their way up, and then now they're on the tour and they're playing guys like Djokovic, guys like Alcaraz, that's not good for the confidence where you think you're such a good player, but then you're just not winning.
100%.
Yeah, moving on, Aiden, why don't you tell us a little bit about the Davis Cup in general, maybe the history, where it came from, just a rundown.
Sounds good. Yeah. So it's called the World Cup of Tennis. And I think that's a self-named thing. They really want to get that association with the World Cup because of how big of an event that is. But
The biggest sporting event in the world.
exactly. Yeah. They're like, oh, it's the World Cup of Tennis. So it's pretty much the same. But it's played every year. In terms of being like the World Cup, there's qualification, then a round robin group stage, and then a knockout stage. And there's only like a few players that compete from each country. It's like 4 to 5 in each tie. That was a weird thing that I was learning about this year, is that every group of matches is called a tie. And so you'd be reading an article that says like this team wins tie. And you're like, wait, did they win or did they tie? And how can they tie? But
Yeah.
yeah, so it's currently made up of 2 singles and 1 doubles match.
So when they have these 4 to 5 players, is there essentially someone on the bench, or do they just play doubles?
I think essentially they bring 4 to 5 guys and have a coach that essentially makes the decision of like, okay, this guy's going to play today. This guy's not going to play today. As we were talking about, Tiafo lost his 2 matches, didn't play in that last tie
Mm,
against Finland.
gotcha.
But yeah, in
Wow.
terms of the history of the Davis Cup, USA has been kind of crazy dominant. They've won 32 times. But to be honest, that kind of makes sense if you look at tennis history and like how many great American players there have been: McEnroe, Connors, Agassi, Courier, Sampras, guys like that. I mean,
I wonder what that dynamic was like, having, for example, the Agassi Sampras rivalry, but then having them on the same team, like supporting each other.
I think there was more patriotism probably when they were playing. So I think they
Mhm.
probably felt more connected because it's like US versus. But I also think there wasn't necessarily that much animosity, I think, between Agassi and Sampras. Like based on his book, Agassi was like, oh, I always have to play Sampras. This sucks. But it wasn't
Yeah.
like I just hate Sampras.
I guess you kind of see that with Federer and Nadal, right? They don't hate each other one bit,
Yeah, exactly.
but they have such a massive rivalry.
100%.
I agree with you. I think Agassi was mostly just like, "Ugh, not again, just another loss to Pete."
Yeah, he always said like, and I came up against Pete. It's always
Yeah.
Pete. I think you repeated it like 20 times in the book. But one thing I was looking at in terms of the history was the US team won in 1992, and it was really like essentially a dream team. Agassi, Courier in singles, Sampras and McEnroe in doubles.
Wow. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that 1992 might have been the peak of US global dominance, just because you have the Soviet Union that has just fallen. American industry is booming. We're easily the wealthiest economy in the world, not even a question. Like China was just starting to emerge. Whereas right now, America is kind of on the decline. So my hot take is American tennis is correlated with the health of the country's standing in the rest of the world.
Well, that's a interesting take.
It's funny how you could just draw random conclusions.
Classic correlation doesn't imply causation type of
Causation,
thing.
exactly.
But what would that mean about the US now? Like we're pretty good at a lot of it, but not the best at anything.
So this is a tennis podcast, so I'll keep my answer pretty, high level. We don't want to get too much into like politics or
Global
economics, but
global
yeah,
economics and
exactly.
politics.
Yeah. I just think the position of the US right now, Ray Dalio came out with his book and his video changing or the New World Order, where essentially it's cyclical, where a country has world dominance. And he's basically saying that the US, it's, going to be around 40 years or so until we are no longer the world superpower. It's looking like China is going to. So I
Or
don't know. I
India.
mean, or India, exactly. So it just kind of, in my opinion, I think when a country is so complacent at the top, the people care less about being a cohesive unit and are more so worried about other things that we shouldn't. Like there's a lot of discourse happening in the US right now, whether it's racial inequality or polarizing politics. Like, come on, look at all the infighting between people, Americans, with each other. Whereas in 1992, I feel like we were just, our economy was still booming. We were on an upward trajectory. And at that point, American, whatever it was, if it was American, it was the best. But nowadays, especially in tennis, if it's American, it's pretty mediocre. It's not great, but it's good.
I mean, I think it's a bold take for sure.
Yeah.
But last thing, I mean, they played Finland yesterday and they had to beat them to advance, which was kind of disappointing given the position that they were in the group. I mean, they had to play the Netherlands, lost, and so they're coming into this last matchup with Finland, and you would think that the US could get it done, but couldn't do it. I don't know. I don't know what it could have been. Like, what do you think?
I mentioned it earlier. It could be that US Open hangover where guys just pushed it to the max, especially Tiafo and Tommy Paul. Maybe their confidence isn't where it was because they did make good US Open runs, but they ultimately both lost to 20-year-old Ben Shelton, which probably isn't a great thing for your confidence and your self-esteem. So maybe going into this tournament, they were a little down, and this just does not help at all. Maybe they're just off. I don't know. Maybe they don't take it seriously anymore. Maybe they simply don't care.
Should have had Shelton come.
Should have had Shelton come. I know. At least, well, so this is kind of another take I have. I feel like the Davis Cup is kind of turning into more so like leave all the good players or the best players out of it. If you're not going to be motivated, let someone else come, like Shelton, like someone even younger, someone less known, where they can come and make a difference or make a name for themselves. Because all
Yeah.
these other countries, people are sitting out, and that's just an amazing opportunity for younger, hungrier players to come up and really put on. But let's get back to Tiafoe and Tommy Paul.
It really kind of makes me think about like what you need to have for your team to be successful in the Davis Cup. And I think what it really comes down to is like if you have two good singles guys, then they can just kind of carry you. Like I was looking at last year, Canada won. They had FAA and
And
Shapovalov
Dennis, yeah.
just carrying them pretty much. They didn't really even need to have a good doubles team.
So do the doubles players not play unless there's a tie?
I think in the group stage they still play because there can be like a tiebreak in terms of the number of matches you won. But I think
Mhm.
after that, I think you just play the singles matches, and if one team wins 2-0, the doubles match doesn't happen.
Going back to earlier, what I was talking about, making it more for the younger players, I think that'll just decelerate the tournament faster than what it's already becoming. If top players are going to keep sitting out, it's kind of like sitting out of your college bowl game, right? If you're a senior, you're getting ready for the draft, you are thinking more about yourself. You're not really thinking about your team. You're going to sit out. So it makes people less likely to watch a bowl game because it's not going to be as good of a game. I feel like I'm drawing some similarities here to that because I think top players are just sitting out. They're not really finding any benefit to playing in the Davis Cup because they're not really passionate and nationalistic about their country, which in turn is making fans less interested in watching because it's not what it used to be.
So in a way, you could say it's like just players being more selfish.
In a way, yeah, I guess so. I would be very, very interested to see what the guys like Agassi, like McEnroe, Sampras, what they have to say about it now.
I think they'd be disappointed that the U.S. is losing in the group stage. But
I know. I know.
I mean, outside the U.S., who do you really expect to be good though? I mean,
Russia. I
that was
mean,
that was the next big one that I was thinking of because I mean, if
yeah.
you have the top two guys in Russia play, you really would expect two wins.
Yeah.
Nobody has two good guys like Medvedev and Rublev.
No. You could kind of say Nadal and Alcaraz.
No, but that's what I'm saying right now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, right now.
Like because Nadal has been out now for what is it, like 6 months.
Yeah. I miss him. It's gonna be weird when he officially retires.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hopefully he comes back like he was said he was going to in 2024.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, other than that, I mean, I think the last couple countries you can expect to do well are just kind of the big countries that multiple players from. The
Mm-hmm.
UK, you got Dan Evans, Nori, Andy
Dan
Murray.
Evans. Yeah. Yeah. Let me ask you this. What do you think is more important? Obviously, the size of the country, because more people, bigger sample size, more players that are likely to do better, or a country that is smaller but has more of a focus on tennis. For example, if you're from a small country and you're good, that country will put way more resources into you, into developing you and making sure that you are kind of the man. Like if you think about it, the Scandinavian countries, Rude is basically the only top Norwegian tennis player. Rusevori is basically the only top
Finish.
Finnish tennis player. Let's see, Yimmer with the Swedes. So
Runa.
Runa at Denmark. Yeah, exactly. So you can really only name one player from each Scandinavian country because they're a lot smaller. And I think having that, it's like, all right, would you rather have five good players or one great player? And I just went on a complete tangent because I asked you a question, then ended with a statement. But
Yeah. I don't remember what the question was.
yeah, I guess it was just what do you think's better? A larger country where you get more of an option to get a better player because you have more people, or a smaller country that's just going to just dedicate all their resources into one person?
In terms of the Davis Cup?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, in terms of the Davis Cup, you got to say, based on history, it's better to have the big country, given that the U.S. has won it so many times.
But nowadays, I mean, it's kind of
You need at least two guys, though. You can't just have the one. Like, I wouldn't
mm,
expect Norway to win the Davis Cup just because they have Rude.
no, especially the way he's playing right now.
Yeah, exactly. Overall, I think the best chance you have is if you have a few good guys in like the top 50 or top 100, you probably have a good chance. And if you have a couple in like the top 30 or top 20, you have a better chance. So
Yeah. So that is the Davis Cup. Let's hop into segments.
sounds good. What's new in tennis? What'd you see?
Ooh, so I saw a great article in GQ on Ben Shelton. And so what stuck out to me the most was Ben Shelton's dad was pissed off when Djokovic did the hanging up the phone celebration. And he handled it the complete opposite way than Ben Shelton, his son, his younger son, who, when asked about it in the press conference, very nonchalant, kept it like, hey, he essentially said, what was it, flattery.
Imitation is the most sincere form of flattery.
Exactly. Whereas his dad was quoted in the GQ article saying that, he was disappointed that a player as good as Novak Djokovic would mock his son. And that's what he said. He goes, he mocked him. I'm disappointed in that. So I thought that was pretty interesting that his dad was angrier than he was. Because Ben Shelton seemed like he didn't really care. He was like, yeah, if he won the match, you can celebrate however you want. But I see it as that's your kid. No one fucks with your kid.
Yeah. I mean, I think I kind of figured out what this celebration was now because I was looking at Ben Shelton's Instagram and he kept posting that picture, like pictures of when he was winning these matches with the phone celebration. And the caption would be like dialed in.
Yeah.
So, like, that's what I think it was like, yeah, I'm dialed in right now. Like, I'm
Yeah.
locked in. But I mean, is he mad at Musetti too then? Because Musetti used the celebration.
Oh yeah, I saw that. No, 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 because he didn't use it against him.
Yeah, I guess the fact that he used it against him is kind of aggressive, but while maybe it was disrespectful of Djokovic to do that, I don't think Djokovic liked that he was celebrating, so he was like, "Oh, I'm going to just."
Yeah, it was shutting him up,
Yeah,
basically.
exactly. That's
I
what it
like that
was.
move. Uh-huh.
But I think also that's kind of just Shelton's personality and trying to be an exciting player and bring that new energy into tennis. So
100%.
I think there's multiple ways you can look at it.
Yeah, I think overall net benefit, the gentleman aspect, the class of tennis is obviously going to be there, but we do need a little more excitement. We need drama. We need celebrations, and we need people's dads other than Stefano Tsitsipas is getting into the news for saying something.
Exactly.
All right, what about you? What's new in your tennis world?
My what's new is about the US Open as well. And the US Open had a record for being the most attended slam ever. Almost a million people attended it, 957,000 people. And what's cool about this is that it seems to increase every single year in terms of the number of people attending, which is great for the sport. It just shows that it's just growing year after year. And that's really what you want to see.
I know. I mean, we were both there this year. How freaking packed was it?
It was crazy. I mean, especially at matches like for Djokovic, that match, I was up in the high rafters and people were coming up and being like, oh, I got to get in next to you. And you're like, geez, man, like this place is packed.
Yeah, hey, it's great to see the sport growing and growing. Each year we'll see a new record, hopefully.
Exactly. Yeah. So you want to hop into bet of the week?
Yeah, let's do it. This will be another interesting quiet week. I'm gonna take Michael Moe minus 147 over De Jong. Not really sure too much about De Jong, and I know Mo made a pretty good run at the U.S. Open. I actually watched his match against Jack Draper. He did lose, but I thought he played well. And this kind of just goes back to one of those name recognition bets where he's an American. I know him at his career high ranking of 81. So hoping he can finish this one out, just kind of be the better player.
Solid.
Who are you taking?
Like we said last week, it's kind of harder to take guys in these challengers just because you don't necessarily know as much about the player they're playing against, or you're going based on one guy, not necessarily on both guys. But I'm going with Cressy plus 105 over Golfin in Saint-Tropez. Cressy, he was a bet of the week last week, and he ended up actually not just winning that match, but winning the whole tournament. It shows that he's at really a high level right now. And simultaneously, Golfin is on a 3-match losing streak. So he's far from his old top 10 days back in 2017. So it's time for, I think, Cressy to continue rolling. And even though he's the underdog, I think he has a really good chance.
Choo choo. Yeah. No, hop on the Cressy train, man. All aboard.
Is it related to the Jari train? Do they go through the same station?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God. Let's roll it.
Yeah.
Hey.
All right. You ready for a match of the week?
Match of the week. Yes. I was super excited about this one because for the most part, the other Davis Cup matches weren't great. But Wawrinka and Nori, those are two big guys, two names. Had to tune into that one. And Wawrinka played lights out. I have never seen a 38-year-old man move the way Stan was moving on that court. Phenomenal display of athleticism, and Nori is no joke. And I think the fact that he beats him, what was it, 7-5, 6-4, we may need to reopen our debate on Wawrinka and Dimitrov because I think Nori is a better player than Dimitrov.
You consider 7'5", 6'4" smoking him?
Smoking? No. I will give you that. He did not smoke him. But I think we need to revisit the debate and say that Wawrinka would beat Dimitrov and not smoke him.
Yeah, either one of them I think could win, but I think my argument was in the fact that you said I think Wawrinka would smoke Dimitrov, especially in their matchups. Like most of them have been very close. And Dimitrov has won the last two, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm just saying Stan still has it. He's still beating top ranked players. And I enjoyed watching it because it was very meticulous point construction where the players were hitting long rallies and then eventually working to the point where they're coming up to the net and finishing. So I liked watching that. And then obviously that backhand. Oh man. Can't get enough of that. How about you? What did you like this week as far as matches?
I mean, I didn't really like this match, but I thought it was a good match. Vertanen beating McDonald 7-6, 1-6, 7-6.
Oh.
The reason I think it was a good match is because it was another one of those matches, kind of like the U.S. Open final, where the critical points are really what separated the two players, in my opinion. I mean, Vertanen wins the first set in a tiebreak, and then McDonald's like, well, I can't lose this match, and destroys him in that second set. But then, I don't know, takes his foot off the gas in that third. And he has a match point in the tiebreak, and he came to the net, and then Vertanen hit a great passing shot and ended up winning the tiebreak and winning the match. So I think it just shows how some critical points can really determine how the match goes overall. And it's just funny how tennis works, that McDonald won 18 games, but it doesn't matter, even though Vertanen only won 15.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah. Getting past is probably one of the worst feelings in a tennis match. It's like you're just standing up there with your pants around your ankles in front of a huge crowd and they're all laughing at you.
I wouldn't have quite come up with that description.
Because you're
but
just
I guess.
helpless. You're up there at the net and then it's just, boom, and it's like, yep, could not do anything.
You have to
about
watch
that.
it. You can't reach the ball. And you're like, what was it supposed to do?
What do you think is worse? Making an error on like if you're up at the net and you at least get a racket on the ball, or just getting straight up passed?
I think definitely getting straight up passed, right?
Because
Like,
I guess so. It happened to me yesterday, and all I could do was
well, no. Here's the thing: if it's just getting straight up passed, or like you go really hard to get it and don't get it back, it's worse to get passed. If it's like getting passed, or they give you a pretty reasonable or easy volley and you miss the volley badly, that's way worse.
Yeah. There's been time because I'd like to come to the net, and yesterday I hit a backhand slice down the line. So when I was coming up, I already wasn't at a great angle. So then he just hit that forehand cross court passing shot, and all I did was like throw up my racket in my hand and clapped it because I was like, damn, that was just an amazing shot.
Yeah.
So wasn't the worst feeling because he just straight up outplayed me.
Yeah.
All right, and that's the show. If you're not already subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube at Painting Lines Podcast. Feel free to shoot us a DM or email us any questions or thoughts at paintinglinespodcast@gmail.com.